Hello, Math 8. Welcome. I am Mrs. Davidson. In case you don't know who I am or you've never met me before, I want us to take a brief moment to breathe and get into our math way of thinking. You're going to need a piece of paper and a pencil for you to have your supplies for this lesson, and you are going to pause this video a lot throughout it so that you can practice the actual math and have some feedback as you go. We have already learned about how to solve two-step equations. So we have a -8 plus 9d equals 64. What I want you to do on your paper is to pause the video and answer those two questions. What does it mean to even solve for d? And then also write your ideas for how you would solve. I don't want to see any math in your work. I just want you to write in written words what your ideas are for how you would even solve for d. Hopefully you came up with some ideas that were close to the words that say something like, I need to get d isolated. That means I need to get d all by itself. And I'm going to use some inverse operations to get there. So now that you have your ideas flowing in a two-step equation, I want you to look at this equation that's in front of you. -7 times the quantity, m minus 5, equals 21. What looks different in this equation? Please write your answers down on your paper. We're going to go ahead and show you how to solve this type of equation. And I'm going to slow down and write the actual steps of what I did to actually solve this equation. To solve for this equation, we need to get m all by itself. And something that looks different is that we have a -7 attached to things in parentheses. So we need to figure out how to isolate m, and what are we going to do to get m by itself. If you notice, those parentheses make m minus 5 be one thing. Whatever m is, you'd have to subtract 5 from it. So we need to figure out how are we going to get rid of those parentheses. And we do that by saying, well, if -7 is next to it, really close like that, that means multiply. So in order to multiply -7, we need to multiply -7 to each term inside that bubble, inside those parentheses. So those arrows show us that we're going to multiply -7 to m, as well as -7 to -5. We call this distribution, or distribute for short. -7 times m is -7m, and a -7 times a -5 is a +35, because a negative times a negative is positive. You're going to notice that I put a line down my slide here, and I do that because for me, it reminds me that we need to keep the scale balanced. And that first commandment says, whatever we do to one side of the equation, we have to do it to the other side. Now that we have it distributed, you're going to notice that this looks very much like a two-step equation that we have solved before. A two-step equation simply means we need to do two inverse operations to get the variable all by itself. So we're going to look at our equation here, and we're going to notice that m is our variable, and it's attached to that -7, but that is just one term. That term is what we refer to as that circle of no touch. You might remember that from a previous video. Because that is the circle of no touch, we're not going to touch that to the very end. We now notice on that left side of the equation, we still have a +35. We need to know what operation undoes a +35 or +35. Subtraction undoes that addition. So we're going to subtract 35 on both sides of the equation so that we can make that 35, 0, and we don't have to write it anymore. Positive 35 minus 35 is 0. We are then going to write what's left, and that means we're going to notice what is left on both sides of the equations. We need that negative 7m, but then we also need to do the math. What is 21 minus 35? One of the ways that I like to think about it is if I have 25 positive people, I have 21 positive people, I have 21 good people in the world. And if I'm taking away 35 bad people, I have negative 35 bad people. That means that positive and that negative are going to fight each other. And 21 positive people and 35 negative people, they're going to fight each other. And we're going to have negative people left in the world. That's a sad fight. And we're going to have negative 14 of those negative people left after that fight. So I rewrote what was there. I rewrote what was left. What's left? Perfect. So now I still don't have m all by itself. I need to make sure that I can get m isolated. I know it's really interesting because you have that negative 7, and we see that and we go, oh, well, that means subtract 7. But that negative 7 is right next to that m. And instead of subtraction, that operation means multiply. So the inverse operation of multiply is division. Good job. I'm glad you thought of that. So that means we need to get m all by itself. So we have to divide m by negative 7. We did that because we divided both sides by negative 7, and we're going to write that. Divide, I can spell, both sides by negative 7. When we did that, we are left with m equals 2. And we're going to circle or square that answer so that we know that m is all by itself and we have a value for it. So how can we know if our answer is correct? What can we do to make sure that we know m really is 2? Think about that and write it on your paper. If you said that we could check the answer by plugging in 2 to where m was in the original, that was a really good answer. If you didn't say that, well, then I just gave you the answer. What we did is we're going to take that 2 and we're going to plug it into that original equation where m is. So I rewrote that here, and I have negative 7 is times the quantity 2 minus 5 should equal 21. And I'm going to put a little question mark. Does it actually equal it? Well, order of operations says we need to deal with what's in those parentheses first. What is 2 minus 5? You said negative 3. You were correct. We're now going to see that we have negative 7 times negative 3, and a negative times a negative is positive, and 21 does in fact equal 21. This is really great news because in math we don't often get to know if we're right or wrong. And with these problems and being able to check your answers, you can say with 100% certainty, you know you are right. And if your answer isn't right, that's okay. That just means that somewhere in there we made a mistake. So we need to go back and edit our mistakes or edit our trying and work at it until we can get the correct answer. This problem, I'm going to actually give you the written steps, and I would love for you to do the math described. So we have that 5 times the quantity m minus 20 equals negative 30. It tells you in the red, yellow, green, and blue exactly what you need to do to make sure that you can solve for m. And why is it important to write the steps as well as read them? I would love for you to pause the video and on your paper, do the math steps that are described and answer why you think it's important to write the steps as well as read them. I really hope that you're hanging in there. Let's practice some together. I say together. I'm not actually going to do these. Let's have you practice them on your own. Make sure that you distribute first. And then you have the two-step equation. You can then circle the area of no touch, do 2 inverse operations, and you should be there. I really want you to try those 3 problems, and that challenge problem, that's going to be a mandatory challenge. That just means it looks a little harder. You got some other extras to do. Just try it. Pause the video. Take some time and try those problems. You still hanging with me? I'm really proud of you for your efforts. I wouldn't leave you hanging. Do you see all these puns I'm giving you? Hee hee, I make jokes. Please look at these answers to your problems and don't erase the mistakes that you made. Simply try again next to your original work. Having those mistakes there, that's how we learn math. I really want you to take the time and check where your problems are. How did you do? Reflect where your mistakes were. How do you ensure that you don't make those same ones again? Okay, amazing mathematicians, we are down to the last slide. What would you say to this learner about the work that they did? Describe in words what that learner should do to fix the mistake they made. Is there a way that they could have known that their answer was just not correct? How would you do that? Go ahead and fix this problem for this learner, and in words, write what you would say to that learner so that they can fix their mistakes and not make that mistake again. Well, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for your time and your really hard work. I'm very proud of you. We'll see you next time.